class. I just finished teaching my lesson, so I thought I'd record my clinical reflection now that it's fresh in my mind. So what the class is working on is Flowers for Algernon, which is a story about a mentally disabled, middle-aged, in his late 30s, man, and he undergoes a procedure that increases his intelligence by about 3. So where he starts out not being able to spell, much of anything, then he progresses to his grammar and spelling and punctuation's perfect, and he's conducting his own experiments, and he's learning all these languages, and obviously it's science fiction because that can't happen. It'd be kind of awesome, but can't happen. And I won't spoil the ending, but it has that's spoiling it. It has a sad ending. The procedure works, but only temporarily, and he loses everything he learns, and he's conscious of that he's forgetting things. He's like, I don't know how to speak French anymore. It's really sad, and it makes you think about the nature of intelligence and all that. But that's what my 8th graders are reading right now in Mr. Sherrell's class. And so for my lesson, I only got to teach 1 hour of the class, or one section of the class. So what I did was I wanted to do a standalone lesson because they're going to be watching the movie version of the book right when they finish reading, and I wanted them to get a good idea of what some differences the movie might have compared to the book. So my lesson is basically about adaptations in general. So there's the different kinds of adaptation. There's books that were made into other books. There's movies that are made into books. Those are literary adaptations, and that's like, that's like Pride and Prejudice being readapted into Bridget Jones' Diary, the book version of Bridget Jones' Diary, not the movie. So it's taking the elements and plot of a story and then basing a new story off of it. Like Bridget Jones' Diary is set in modern day, whereas Jane Austen's book is set in like the Victorian era or something. Then there's stage adaptations, and I showed him this really cute clip from the Lion King stage adaptation because they have different obstacles they have to encounter. Stage adaptation of Lion King would have to be different because you can't have, actual meerkats or warthogs talking and singing. You have to have real people as puppets. Then the focus for my lesson was on film adaptation. So that's when books are made into movies, when other stories are made into movies, when Shakespeare's plays are made into movies. It's all, they're kind of a big deal right now. Harry Potter kind of started this whole trend. There have been movie adaptations of lots of books. It's kind of where a lot of movies come from. But Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Divergent, which they had just seen in theaters on a field trip, it was a good jumping off point to get them thinking about Charlie, which is the live-action movie version of Flowers for Algernon that they're reading. So I wanted them thinking about how and why the movie has to be different than the book. What are the advantages and disadvantages of different storytelling styles? So that was a big part of my lesson. I thought it went really well. The first thing they did, my opening activity was that they would, I gave one person in each group a picture, and it wasn't too hard. Like, the pictures weren't super complicated. Like, this is probably the most complex one they got, just a house with shingles. And what I wanted them to do without showing the rest of the group is I wanted them to use their words to describe what they're seeing, and then everyone else in the group had to draw what they think they were being described. So it was kind of like an adaptation, but it was a little different. I think they really were engaged in it. They really enjoyed it. They got really into it. Sometimes the pictures are really close to what the image was. Like, some people got really close and some people were just so far off because the description's different. And I kind of thought that was a good metaphor for like the author has a vision of what's going on in the book in their head, and they try to transmit that into words. And then a director or screenwriter has to take those words and turn it into something you see and you hear. And it's a tricky process, and there are changes that just have to happen because no two people interpret the same story the same way. Even between reading a book once and reading it again, you have a different reading. That's reader response theory, just citing some sources for that. And So then I made a Prezi on adaptations that explained all those things. I got them thinking about movies and films they've seen and then that they've read the book of. So they'd just seen Divergent, they'd just gone on a field trip to see it. And some of them had read the book beforehand, some hadn't, some are reading it now. So I had to ask them, like, what they thought the differences were, what was cut out, what was added in. The only problems were he'd reserved time to go to the library during my class period because they've been asking to go for weeks. So instead of having the 48 minutes to teach my lesson that I would have liked, I had about 30, 35 maybe. I think they took about 15 minutes in the library. And it was unfortunate. I knew it was going to happen beforehand, so I was prepared. I'd had 2 activities. One took about 15, 20 minutes, one took 5 minutes. So if I ran out of time, I could switch one or the other. Ideally, I'd get time to do both, but I was prepared to not have time to get both things done and just do one or the other. So their formative assessment was the discussion that took place after, where I asked them, you know, you're going to be watching Charlie soon, the movie version. What do you think is going to be different? And there's changes in point of view, which they just learned, you know, first person, third person. There's Flower Saladron is a journal, so you have to change the entire way the story is told because you can tell Charlie's getting smarter because his grammar improves, his spelling improves. Even before he knows it himself, you can tell that he's getting smarter. And in the movie, you can't just show him writing and spelling. You have to show him talking to other people and show more dialogue than would be in the story. So you have to invent some dialogue. It just, you know, it's a way of telling the story a different way. But because we ran out of time, I only had time to do a formative assessment, which was them taking the journal entries from the story and acting them out in front of the class. And I didn't have time for everyone to go up and perform, but I had time for a couple groups, and I think they really enjoyed it. So I asked my teacher for feedback after I'd done the lesson, and he said that it was great. The kids are really engaged. The only things he'd mark off were things like classroom management. Like, he has his own way of dealing with his class. They're really loud, they're rambunctious, they're fun, they love interacting with each other, which was great for me because I got to do some good group work, good discussions were had. But it's hard to quiet them down, so I kind of had to use his style of yelling over them, which is what he does. And he's got this booming man voice, and I've got this little pipsqueak voice, so it was difficult. But it worked. They listened to me pretty well. When I was actually giving my lesson, they were quiet and attentive. So overall, I think it went really well. I have one more day there, which is sad because I really like them. I like the class. They're a lot of fun. Wish I could have been there more. I guess I've said that in my last clinical, but it was a really fun teaching experience. My mentor teacher said that I seemed comfortable, which is probably the first time anyone's ever said that about my public speaking, because I don't usually seem too comfortable. I think I come across as nervous sometimes, and that's just something I'll get better at over time. But yeah, teaching, I definitely want to do it. I'm really excited. I'm excited to make lessons like that and teach them every day because it was a lot of fun. And I think the kids really responded to the activity and the lesson. So, yeah, 2 thumbs up.